The childless widow was given to the rancher as punishment, but at harvest she returned with a son. Red Mesa was a far frontier world where the sky looked bigger than anywhere else. 2 pale suns rose every morning and painted the land in red and gold. Wind moved across the plains like a living thing, pushing dust into long waves. The people who lived there were tough because the world demanded it. Water was counted, power was saved, and every harvest decided who would stay and who would leave. Caleb Hale lived outside the settlement, far enough that town lights were only a faint glow at night. His ranch sat near a dry creek bed and a line of old rocks that held heat after sunset. He raised longhorned cattle that had been adapted for this planet, and he grew hardy grain in fields protected by low wind walls. He worked alone most days, with only machines and animals for company. Caleb was not rude, but he did not waste words. He was the kind of man who fixed problems before talking about them. Years ago, he had been more open, more friendly. People remembered that. But after a bad colony accident took away the small family he once had, something inside him went quiet. He still did his work. He still helped when needed. He just did it without letting anyone get close. Late one afternoon, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Caleb watched from the porch of his small house as a convoy approached. 2 rugged trucks and a council rover. That meant trouble or business, and Caleb rarely liked either. He met them at the gate. 3 council members stepped out, boots crunching in the dry dirt. They wore clean jackets and carried datapads like shields. Behind them stood a woman with a travel bag. Her clothes were simple, used, and dusty from the road. Her hands were bare. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a tired strength. "This is Mara Voss," said Councillor Wren, the oldest of the group. "Do of her." Caleb had heard the name. Everyone had. Mara was the widow from the East Ridge housing row. Her husband had died in a mining cave-in last year. The colony had held a public mourning, and people had promised to look after her. But promises on Red Mesa were like thin cloth in a storm. They tore fast when fear arrived. Rumors had spread after her husband's death. A power unit failed near her home. Then an irrigation valve broke. Then a small crop patch turned yellow for no clear reason. People began to whisper that she carried bad luck. Some said she was cursed. Others said she had brought something from off-world. No one had proof, but proof did not matter as much as fear. Caleb looked at Mara. She did not lower her eyes. She stood straight like someone who had already survived the worst and did not plan to bend for smaller things. Councillor Wren cleared his throat. "The council has decided Mara will be placed here for a harvest cycle. She will work under your supervision. This is a corrective placement." He did not like the sound of it. He did not like the idea of the council dropping their problems on his land. Still, he also did not like the way the council spoke about a person like she was cargo. Mara spoke before Caleb could. Her voice was steady, not soft and not loud. "I didn't ask to come. But I will work. I will not be a burden." Councillor Wren nodded as if that settled everything. "Your records show you have extra living space, a spare room. You can house her. Food rations will be adjusted." Caleb glanced at the council members, then back to Mara. He could see the strain in her posture, the way she held herself like she expected a fight at any moment. He had seen that in people who had been pushed aside too many times. He opened the gate. "Bring your bag," he said to her, not to the council. "I'll show you where you'll sleep. Work starts at sunrise." The council left quickly, almost relieved. Their engines faded into the red distance. Mara stood near the barn with her bag, waiting like she was afraid to step anywhere without permission. Caleb pointed toward the house. "You'll have the back room. There's water. Don't waste it. Food is stored in the cold box. If you need something, say it." "Thank you." Caleb did not answer with a kind word, but he did not shut the door either. That was the closest thing to welcome he knew how to give. The first morning, Caleb woke before the suns rose. He checked the weather feed, watched the sky for signs of a dry storm, and walked outside to feed the animals. To his surprise, Mara was already up. She stood at the edge of the pen with a coil of rope and a small tool kit, studying the cattle as if she was learning their moods. "I can help," she said. Caleb tested her with a simple task. "Fence line near the west slope is weak. If you can fix it, do that." Mara went straight to work. She didn't complain, didn't ask why, and didn't try to impress him with speeches. She just moved with purpose. By midday, the fence was not only fixed, it was reinforced in a better way, with stronger anchors and cleaner wiring, Caleb noticed. He did not praise her, but he watched closely. Over the next several days, Mara kept working like someone who had something to prove, but not to please anyone. She cleaned, repaired, and learned. She asked direct questions about the ranch systems. What did the soil census report? How often did the water filters clog? What kind of feed blend produced the best weight gain? Caleb answered when he could. Sometimes he shrugged, because he had never bothered to measure things too deeply. He did what worked, and that had been enough to survive. Mara, however, looked like someone who had been trained to understand systems, not just endure them. One afternoon, a water pump began making a loud, uneven noise. Caleb assumed it was another part wearing out and prepared to shut it down and replace it. Mara knelt beside the unit and listened. Then she pulled out a small scanner from her kit. It was old but well cared for. "The pump isn't dying," she said. "It's choking. The filter chamber is misaligned by a few degrees. It's scraping the edge." Caleb stared at her. "How do you know that?" Mara kept her eyes on the machine. "Because this sound isn't random. It repeats." She opened the panel, adjusted a worn bracket, and reseated the chamber with steady hands. The noise stopped. The pump ran smooth. Caleb didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "Where did you learn that?" Mara wiped her hands on a cloth. "Before I came here, I worked with agricultural systems." "Not on this planet. On a place that almost failed because people didn't listen to the land. We rebuilt it." Caleb looked at the fields beyond the barn. Red Mesa's soil was stubborn, thin, and unpredictable. He had fought it for years. "Why didn't you tell the council?" Mara gave a small, tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I tried. After my husband died, they stopped hearing me. It was easier for them to believe I was the problem." Caleb understood that more than he wanted to. He knew what it felt like to be reduced to a story other people told. Days turned into weeks. The ranch began to change in small ways. Mara suggested adjusting the irrigation pattern at dawn instead of midday to reduce loss from heat. She suggested mixing compost with mineral dust from the creek bed to strengthen the soil. Caleb was cautious, but he let her try. When the crops responded, he let her do more. The cattle also seemed calmer around her. That might have been imagination, but Caleb saw it again and again. Even the most stubborn animals moved with less stress when she guided them. Mara didn't force the herd. She watched their movements and worked with them instead of against them. One evening, the first green shoots of the grain fields looked taller than they should for that time of season. Caleb stood at the edge of the rows, unsure what to think. Mara stood beside him, hands folded, eyes on the plants. "You're doing something," Caleb said, not accusing, just trying to understand. Mara looked at him. "I'm not doing magic. I'm doing work. People in town won't see it that way." Mara's face hardened for a moment, then softened again. "People in town don't come out here. They won't see anything unless they want to."
Night settled over the ranch.
Stars appeared, sharp and bright. The twin moons rose, pale and distant. Caleb lit a small heater on the porch, more for habit than comfort. Mara sat on the steps, careful not to take too much space, like she still felt unwelcome. Caleb didn't say sorry for the council or the colony. He wasn't good at that. Instead, he said, "If you keep working like this, you'll have something the council can't ignore." Mara looked at him. Sometimes they ignore what helps them, because accepting help means admitting they were wrong. Caleb didn't answer, because he knew she was right. As the weeks passed, the first signs of harvest season appeared. The air grew drier. Windstorms came more often, but Mara prepared the fields. She set up simple windbreaks in smart places. She tuned the moisture sensors with careful adjustments. Caleb watched her like he watched the weather, with respect and quiet attention. Then, one morning, Caleb woke to silence that felt wrong. The ranch was too still. He walked to the back room and found the bed made neatly. Mara's bag was gone. The small scanner tool was gone. The porch steps were empty. Caleb searched the barn, the fields, the creek bed. No footprints stayed long in Red Mesa dust, but he found one thing that didn't belong. A small marker beacon hidden under a rock near the fence line. It blinked once, then went dark, like it had sent a message and finished its job. Caleb stood there with the beacon in his hand. The wind pushed against his jacket. He didn't know where she went or why she left without a word, but he knew one thing clearly. Marvos did not run away out of fear. She left because she had a plan. And whatever that plan was, it was tied to the harvest. Because the fields had never looked this alive before, and Red Mesa never gave gifts without asking for something in return. Caleb Hale stood for a long time beside the empty fence line, holding the small marker beacon in his hand. The wind moved through the tall grass and carried red dust across the plains, but he barely noticed. The ranch felt different without Mara. The work was the same, the animals were the same, but the quiet felt heavier. He returned to the house slowly. The back room was clean, almost too clean, like someone had prepared it for a long absence. She had taken only what belonged to her. No tools from the ranch were missing, no supplies were wasted. That told him something important. She had not left in panic. Caleb placed the beacon on the table and studied it carefully. It was not colony standard equipment. The metal surface showed marks from travel and repair, and the signal light looked advanced compared to most devices used on Red Mesa. He pressed a small switch, but nothing happened. Whatever message it had sent was already gone. He sat down in silence, thinking about the last weeks, the way she studied the fields, the way she adjusted systems without asking for credit, the way she spoke about the land like it was alive. She had been preparing for something. Outside, the cattle moved slowly toward the feeding area. Caleb forced himself back into routine. Work always came first on Red Mesa. Questions could wait. The first days without her were hard. The irrigation schedule she created was detailed, but some parts were too technical for Caleb to fully understand. He followed her notes carefully, adjusting valves and checking sensors twice instead of once. The crop still looked strong, but small warning signs appeared. A moisture reading shifted. A temperature alert flashed briefly. Without Mara's quick understanding, each small problem took longer to solve. News traveled fast in the settlement. By the end of the week, rumors reached Caleb through short messages sent over the colony network. She ran away. The curse followed her. She joined smugglers. Rumors were easy to create and hard to stop, but one message from the council asked him to report to town. He delayed as long as possible, but finally rode into the settlement on a quiet morning. Red Mesa's main street was busy with traders, repair crews, and farmers preparing for harvest. People looked at Caleb with curiosity, some with sympathy, some with hidden judgment. The council building stood at the center, clean and bright compared to the dusty homes around it. Inside, Councillor Wren and two others waited. "We heard she left," Wren said without greeting. Caleb nodded once. "No explanation?" "No." "We expected this. Some people cannot accept help." Caleb felt a small flash of anger but kept his voice calm. "She helped my ranch." One council member raised an eyebrow, or made it dependent on her. He knew their minds were already decided. "The placement experiment is considered unsuccessful," Wren said. "You will continue alone. The colony cannot spare more resources for uncertain cases." Caleb stood, ready to leave, but paused. "Did she contact you?" The council members exchanged looks. "No," Wren said finally. "And if she does, she must report for evaluation." Caleb left without another word. Outside, he noticed something strange. Two strangers stood near the supply market, wearing travel gear unlike anything used by local ranchers. Their equipment looked advanced, their posture confident. One of them glanced at Caleb, then turned away quickly. Caleb's instincts told him to remember that. Back at the ranch, work continued. Days passed under the twin suns. The fields grew stronger, almost unnaturally healthy. The grain stalks reached higher than expected for that stage of growth. Caleb checked for disease or system errors but found none. At night, he sometimes sat on the porch and thought about Mara's words. Work speaks louder than rumors. He wondered where she was and why she had trusted him enough to leave her plans behind. One evening, a trader named Elias stopped by. He was a friendly man who traveled between colonies, bringing news and spare parts. "I heard you had a guest," Elias said, climbing down from his vehicle. Caleb nodded. "People are talking," Elias continued. "Some say she was seen at the canyon ruins." Caleb looked up. The canyon ruins were old structures left behind by unknown builders long before human settlers arrived. Most colonists avoided them. Strange signals often appeared there, and machines sometimes stopped working without clear reason. "You believe that?" Caleb asked. "I believe travelers see many things, but I also heard an off-world ship landed near the canyon 3 nights ago. Not a trader. Something else." That caught Caleb's attention. "Alliance markings," Elias added quietly. "Scientific or agricultural, maybe? Hard to tell from distance." After Elias left, Caleb stood outside for a long time, staring toward the distant horizon where the canyon lay. The idea that Mara had gone there did not feel impossible. She had spoken about restoring damaged ecosystems. She had studied the land like someone searching for hidden answers. Weeks passed, and harvest season moved closer. Without her guidance, Caleb worked harder than ever to keep the ranch stable. He followed her system notes carefully, slowly learning to understand the deeper patterns she had created. Sometimes he spoke out loud while working, explaining problems as if she were still listening. He didn't realize he was doing it until one evening when the silence answered him. One night, a strange light appeared far away near the canyon direction. It glowed briefly against the sky, then vanished. Caleb watched carefully, unsure if it was a storm reflection or something else. The next morning, he checked his scanners. A faint signal had appeared and disappeared quickly, too fast to track. It was similar to the signal from the beacon she left behind. Hope and worry mixed inside him. As days turned into months, the ranch began showing signs of stress. Without precise adjustments, the irrigation system struggled during heat waves. Caleb worked late into the night repairing pipes and adjusting filters. He respected more deeply now how much knowledge Mara carried. Despite the challenges, the crops survived. Strong roots held the soil together. Windstorms damaged nearby fields owned by other ranchers, but Caleb's field stayed mostly protected because of the wind barriers she had installed. People from town started noticing. One neighbor stopped by and asked how he managed to keep his crops alive when others struggled. Caleb simply said, "Good planning." Harvest season approached fast. The air felt charged, as if the land itself waited for something. Caleb felt it too, a sense that the story was not finished. One morning before sunrise, the ranch scanner made a soft alert sound. Caleb walked inside and looked at the screen. A small object approached from the outer sky, moving slowly through the dust clouds. He leaned closer. The signal code matched the beacon Mara had left behind. Caleb stepped outside as the first light touched the horizon. The distant shape of a small transport ship appeared through the red dust, descending toward the ranch with steady control. His heart beat faster, though his face remained calm. Whatever answers he had been waiting for were finally coming back to him across the open sky. The transport ship came down slowly through the red dust, its engines humming with a low, steady sound that felt different from local colony vehicles. Caleb Hale stood near the fence line, arms crossed, watching carefully. The morning air was cool, and the twin suns had just begun to rise, casting long shadows across the fields. The ship was smaller than most cargo transports, but clearly advanced. Its surface carried markings Caleb did not recognize, clean lines and symbols that looked more like research or exploration than trade. Dust lifted around it as it landed gently near the barn. Caleb did not rush forward. He waited. The door opened with a soft hiss. Mara stepped out first. She looked stronger than before, standing tall with quiet confidence. Her clothes were different now, practical travel gear mixed with local ranch wear. The tired look that once stayed in her eyes had changed into something steadier, calmer. Then Caleb noticed the small figure standing beside her. A young boy, no more than 6 or 7 years old, held her hand. His dark hair moved with the wind, and his eyes watched everything with curiosity instead of fear. Mara walked toward Caleb slowly. "I wasn't sure you would still be here," she said. Caleb gave a small nod. "It's my ranch." She smiled slightly, like she expected that answer. The boy looked up at Caleb without hesitation. "Are you, the rancher?" Caleb blinked once, surprised by the direct question. "Yes." The boy grinned, satisfied. Mara rested her hand gently on the child's shoulder. "This is Leo," she said. "He came with me." Caleb waited for more explanation, but instead of speaking immediately, Mara turned to look at the fields. The tall grain moved gently in the wind, strong and healthy. "You kept everything alive," she said quietly. "I followed your notes," Caleb replied. Mara nodded, clearly pleased. The sound of another vehicle approaching broke the moment. A small group from the settlement had already noticed the ship and arrived quickly. Counselor Wren stepped forward, curiosity mixed with caution. "You left without permission," Wren said sharply. Mara faced him calmly. "I left because I had to finish work that could help this colony." "And you return with a child?" Mara's voice remained steady. "I will explain." The council and several ranchers gathered near the barn while the wind moved softly around them. Mara spoke clearly so everyone could hear. After leaving the ranch, she had traveled to the canyon ruins. Hidden within those structures were old systems designed by unknown builders, tools meant to restore damaged ecosystems. She had studied similar technology before coming to Red Mesa, and she believed the ruins contained something that could help the struggling land. At the canyon, she encountered an off-world agricultural alliance, a group dedicated to helping frontier colonies survive environmental challenges. They had been studying the ruins as well. Together, they unlocked new methods to strengthen soil and stabilize weather patterns. And the boy? One rancher asked. Mara looked at Leo gently before answering. His colony failed because their environment collapsed. The Alliance rescued survivors. He lost his family there. I chose to bring him with me because he deserved a home. The group fell silent. Some faces softened. Others remained uncertain. Counselor Wren frowned. You should have reported this to us. Would you have listened? Wren did not answer. Caleb watched the exchange quietly. He saw how Leo stayed close to Mara, but watched the ranch with bright interest. The boy's attention moved from the cattle to the fields to the sky, like everything was new and exciting. Finally, Caleb spoke. What happens now? Now we finish what we started. Over the next days, the ranch became busy again. Mara unpacked equipment from the transport, small devices that monitored soil energy, advanced water regulators, and compact drones that floated quietly above the fields. Caleb helped set everything up, asking questions when needed. He noticed how naturally they worked together again, like no time had passed. Leo followed Caleb everywhere. He asked endless questions about the animals and the land. Why do the cattle move together like that? They trust the lead, Caleb answered. How do you know when a storm is coming? You watch the sky and listen to the wind? The boy absorbed every word. One evening, Caleb found Leo sitting near the barn, drawing shapes in the dust. What are you making? Caleb asked. A map, Leo said proudly. Mara says every place has patterns. If you learn them, you understand the land. Caleb felt something warm in his chest at the words. Mara joined them later, watching quietly as the boy showed Caleb his drawing. The three of them stood together under the fading light, and for the first time the ranch felt less lonely. As harvest season grew closer, new challenges appeared. Weather forecasts predicted a strong solar storm that could damage crops and disrupt power systems. Other ranchers worried openly, remembering past storms that had destroyed entire harvests. Mara worked long hours adjusting the new systems. She explained that the technology from the canyon could create protective energy fields that reduced damage from solar radiation, but the systems required careful coordination. Caleb listened closely. He trusted her now without doubt. One afternoon, Counselor Wren returned to observe the progress. He watched the improved fields and advanced equipment with growing respect. You may have been right, he admitted quietly. Mara did not respond with pride. The land responds to care, not authority. As days passed, the colony's attitude slowly changed. Ranchers who once avoided Mara now visited to learn from her methods. They saw results with their own eyes: stronger crops, healthier soil, more stable systems. Leo became part of daily life on the ranch. He helped feed animals, learned to ride slowly under Caleb's watchful eye, and laughed freely in ways that brought new life to the quiet place. One evening, as the sun set, Caleb stood beside Mara at the edge of the field. You came back, he said simply. Mara looked at the horizon. I wanted to leave something better behind, and I knew you would keep working even when it was hard. Caleb nodded slowly. Above them, the sky darkened, and distant flashes of light hinted that the solar storm was approaching faster than expected. The ranch stood ready, stronger than before, but the real test had not yet begun. As the wind picked up and the first energy warnings appeared on the monitors, Caleb realized that everything they had built together would soon face its greatest challenge. The sky over Red Mesa changed slowly at first, then all at once. A deep red glow spread across the horizon as the solar storm approached. The twin suns faded behind layers of charged clouds, and the air felt heavy, almost alive. Ranchers across the plains prepared for impact, securing equipment and moving animals into safe zones. Caleb Hale stood near the main control unit of the ranch, watching the warning signals flash one after another. Mara moved quickly between systems, her hands steady and her voice calm. She checked power levels, adjusted field stabilizers, and activated the protective network she had built using the canyon technology. Small drones lifted into the air, forming quiet patterns above the crops. It will hold, she said, more to reassure everyone than herself. Leo watched from the porch, eyes wide but not afraid. He had seen storms before, but this one felt different. The wind carried energy that made the air crackle softly. Caleb walked over and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Stay near the house when it starts, he said gently. Leo nodded, but his gaze stayed fixed on the sky. The first wave of the storm arrived as a sudden blast of hot wind. Dust rose high into the air, turning the world into a moving wall of red. The energy shields shimmered faintly around the fields, barely visible but strong enough to bend the wind's force. Caleb climbed onto his rover and began guiding the cattle toward the reinforced shelter area. The animals sensed the danger and moved faster than usual. Mara stayed near the control systems, monitoring power flow and adjusting the shield strength. Lightning flashed silently across the clouds, not like natural lightning, but wide arcs of energy moving between layers of atmosphere. The ground vibrated lightly, making the metal fences hum. "Power level's dropping," Mara called out over the comm unit. Caleb guided the last group of cattle into safety and returned quickly. He could see the strain on the equipment. Even with advanced technology, the storm pushed harder every minute. "We need to stabilize the Westfield manually," Mara said. "The shield there is weak." Caleb grabbed his gear without hesitation. Together they moved through the wind, leaning forward as dust struck their clothes. The shield generator stood near the edge of the field, its lights flickering. Mara opened the panel and worked fast. Caleb held the equipment steady while she replaced a damaged energy node. The wind howled around them, but neither stopped. Finally, the generator stabilized, and the faint protective field brightened again. The crops beneath it bent but did not break. They returned to the house just as the second wave of the storm hit. This time the sky turned darker, almost purple, and energy pulses spread across the horizon like ripples on water. "It looks like the sky is breathing," he said quietly. Mara smiled at the description. "That's not far from the truth." Hours passed as they worked together. Caleb managed the physical tasks, moving between barns and systems. Mara balanced the energy network, making constant adjustments. Leo helped by reading sensor numbers aloud, his voice steady despite the shaking walls. Outside, other ranchers struggled. Some systems failed under the storm's strength. Calls for help came through the colony network. Without hesitation, Mara redirected extra energy from their stabilizers to support nearby farms. Caleb noticed, but said nothing. He understood that survival on Red Mesa depended on helping each other. As the storm reached its peak, a loud alarm sounded. The main power core dropped suddenly.
Mara checked the readings quickly. The central battery is overloaded.
"If it fails, the shields will collapse." Caleb grabbed his jacket. "Tell me what to do." They rushed outside again. The wind nearly pushed them back, but they moved forward step by step. At the power core, sparks jumped from exposed wires. Mara worked quickly, guiding Caleb through manual adjustments. "Hold this steady," she said. Caleb braced himself against the metal frame, ignoring the heat and vibration. Together they reset the flow channels, spreading energy across multiple lines instead of forcing it through one. The system stabilized. Slowly, the storm began to weaken. The red haze thinned, and the energy flashes faded into the distance. After many long hours, the wind slowed to a gentle breeze. Caleb stood in the field, breathing deeply. The crops still stood tall. The cattle remained safe. The ranch had survived. Mara walked beside him, exhaustion clear on her face but relief in her eyes. "We did it," she said quietly. As morning light returned, other ranchers arrived, amazed at the condition of Caleb's fields. Many had lost part of their harvest, but the protective network had saved large sections of the colony's crops, thanks to Mara's decision to share power. Counselor Wren approached slowly, his expression serious but respectful. "You saved more than your own land," he said. "The colony owes you both." Mara shook her head gently. "The land saved us because we worked together." Machines rolled through golden fields, gathering grain stronger and fuller than anyone expected. Laughter returned to the settlement as people realized the season had not been lost. The council publicly thanked Mara and admitted their mistake in judging her. This time, the colony listened when she spoke. Plans were made to expand her systems across Red Mesa, ensuring a stronger future. Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Leo ran through the fields, learning from Caleb and helping with small tasks. His laughter filled spaces that once felt empty. One evening, as the sun set in orange and purple colors, Caleb and Mara stood together on the porch. "You changed this place," Caleb said. Mara looked at the horizon thoughtfully. "No, we changed it together." Caleb nodded slowly. For the first time in many years, he did not feel alone. The ranch was no longer just a place to survive. It had become a home filled with purpose. Leo ran toward them holding a small bundle of grain he had collected himself. "Look," he said proudly. Caleb smiled, a rare and quiet expression. The wind moved gently across the fields, carrying the promise of future seasons. Red Mesa was still a hard world, but it was no longer a lonely one. The widow one sent away as punishment had returned not only with knowledge but with hope, and together they built something stronger than any storm could break.